Hello, and welcome to Stand With Us Connect. I'm Yoni Zierler, and we're coming to you live from Israel. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. It is really, as usual, great to connect with all of you. In a moment, I'll bring in my guest on the topic of today's show, which is saving the Dead Sea. But before I do that, I wanted to take a moment to let you know about a special movie produced by Stand With Us. The movie is called Minority of One, and it explores how a regular young man from Cairo grew up hating Jews, but managed to free his mind and ultimately himself, even at great risk. You'll see how pivotal world events like 9/11 and the Arab Spring look like through his eyes. The global premiere for this film is on June 22nd, and I promise you, you don't want to miss it. Today's show is streaming all across our Stand With Us digital platforms, and it has really never been easier to get involved than it is today. Throughout the show, you can actually post comments and they will appear on the screen. And it doesn't matter if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or any other platform. This applies to all of them. You can also post questions in the comments to be asked live. So please make sure that you're in touch with us throughout the show. We want you to interact and we want to hear from you. I hope that you realize by now that we at Stand With Us are fueled by love, our love for Israel and for all of you, for our supporters of Israel and Stand With Us. And if the feeling is mutual, if you love the work of Stand With Us and you want to support what we do, you can do so by going to standwithus.com/donate. Today, we are joined by Noam Bedein. Noam is a Sabra, a native Israeli who grew up in Efrat in Gush Etzion on the Judean hilltops outside of Jerusalem. After completing his army service as a staff sergeant in artillery scout unit, Noam went exploring and backpacking for 1 year to 10 countries in the Far East. Upon his return, Noam became an Israeli photojournalist and international speaker and has over a decade of experience in presenting the challenges facing the state of Israel throughout the world. Noam established and directed the Sderot Media Center from 2007 to 2016, presenting the voices and faces of the Israelis who were living under the threat of rocket fire on the Gaza border. In his position, Noam hosted thousands of international leaders and diplomats, the foreign press, Christian missions, and student and youth groups as well. In 2016, Noam shifted his focus to Israel's endangered world wonder, the Dead Sea, and has since been exploring the changes it is undergoing and the healing that it requires. Currently, Noam is directing the Dead Sea Revival Project, an environmental educational organization that he established, and that brings us to today's show, Saving the Dead Sea. So Noam, welcome. Thank you for being here with us, and how are you doing?
Thank you, Yoni. Wonderful to be here today.
Great. It's a pleasure to see you. I actually have had the pleasure of knowing you for a while now, and we'll actually, I think, in a moment, we'll talk a little bit about the first time that I met you. But before that, let's make sure that the playing field here is leveled and everyone knows what we're talking about. Let's dive right in. What exactly is the Dead Sea Revival Project that you founded and are currently directing?
Well, the Dead Sea Revival Project started like 4 years ago. Basically, it's an NGO, a nonprofit dedicated to sharing the Dead Sea story to the world through any way as possible, through environmental art, through education, research, documentation, activism, any way as possible to share the significance of this world wonder. I mean, how many people understand that 25% of the world's agriculture are using minerals of the Dead Sea, feeding up to 1 billion people around the world? 3% of the healthcare treatments are at the Dead Sea specifically. The Dead Sea, how unique it actually is. It's the lowest place on Earth, considered the 8th wonders of the world, one of the saltiest bodies on Earth. This has a huge significance to the scientific world, to the therapeutic world. And we are out there to try sharing the story because it's actually going. It's going away.
Wow. Okay. So in a moment, we'll talk about what's happening with the Dead Sea. Just real quickly, bring us all up to speed. What you mentioned, some of the mediums that you're using. Maybe give us an example of some of the things that you've been doing through those different mediums.
Well, I'll be honest. The main thing I've personally been doing, I've been documenting the Dead Sea on a boat excursion. Basically, the entire north and western part of the Dead Sea is almost closed off because of sinkholes, up to 6,000 sinkholes in this area. And basically, the only way to explore and to accompany this world wonder from up close is only from the sea. So basically, marketing and branding this whole concept of these awareness boat excursions, I was able to keep on documenting and exploring the Dead Sea and having people around the world joining us in these one of a kind adventures. That's one of the venues that's actually was has been the focus to really experience the lowest place on earth from in a very personal, intimate kind of way to these boat and kayak excursions on the Dead Sea.
So most people, when they come to Israel, they're thinking about the Dead Sea, and they're going and they want to float in the Dead Sea, but you're actually taking a boat out there, which allows people to see it from even closer than what they would be able to, if I understood correctly.
Correct. I mean, there's only one boat today on the Dead Sea. I mean, there's room up to 12 people at each time going on these boat excursions. But yeah, basically, this is exactly the point. People that do come to Israel vacationing in the Dead Sea, which is, number two on the touristic list of visiting the area. Mitzada, and of course the other touristic attractions. But the mainly things people actually do today is floating and using the beautiful mud for for health and for cosmetic reasons. But at the same time, there's not much information or content about the Dead Sea when actually coming to the Dead Sea itself, and that's where the need actually is. Especially talking about youth delegation, the educational tourism that come to Israel, they don't have too much content of this world wonder. And this is the gap that we're trying to fill in, being the spokesperson for this, for the Dead Sea, and speaking up for it.
It sounds like it's a big title, spokesperson of the Dead Sea, and a very cool one as well. And if I understood correctly, part of what you're also doing, you're bringing people there, and you also you've been documenting the Dead Sea, correct? You've been photographing, and you had an exhibition not too long ago, competition.
For sure, I'm actually. I think I've been the first one to document the Dead Sea solely from a boat, from the sea itself. And after a period of time, I realized, I'll just tell you the first experience going on this boat excursion as a born and raised Israeli. It's a 45-minute drive from Jerusalem, the northern part of the Dead Sea. And going on this boat, it really opened my eyes, understanding why this was a nominee of one of the seventh wonders of the world. And it did not hit me yet, but until the second time I went on this boat excursions, I had a delegation from Denmark, and we went on this boat. We went on the exact same route, and once we got on this boat, I did not recognize the places we've been to because everything has drastically changed. So when it really hits you personally in an intimate kind of way, you understand there's something that has to be done. I mean, people know in general that the Dead Sea the water level is receding, but seeing it from up close in such a dramatic kind of way, I basically took it upon myself to keep on doing these excursions, to keep on documenting, and over a period of time, having a one-of-a-kind content and archive of really showing on one hand the contrast of seeing the dramatic changes of the Dead Sea year after year, but on the other hand, exposing the beauty and magic of this world wonder and inspiring people around the world about Israel with the Dead Sea story is a fascinating topic to be sharing and to getting people involved with.
You're making me really excited and waiting for the day where I can join you on a boat and see this for myself. I'm gonna rewind though, and I want to ask you. When we first met each other, you were still at the Sderot Media Center. You were documenting life under fire in Sderot. So this shift to the Dead Sea, was that born out of that first boat ride that you took, or was you shifted over and then took the first boat ride? What pushed you from documenting Sderot and basically in some ways battle photojournalism and scenes of the difficult reality in Sderot to shifting over to the beautiful wonders of the Dead Sea?
It's a very good question. What does it have to do with Sderot or chasing rockets and all of a sudden going to the Dead Sea and documenting the beauty and the drama? I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but I can say overall, my story, I think, in a decade, in a nutshell, is really becoming a war photographer for many years of chasing rockets, pounding into Sderot, into the Israeli communities on the Gaza border. and then shifting my focus into the environmental art photography. And I think that the shift that basically took upon myself, the Sderot rocket reality, I did not choose to be doing that kind of work of literally living in that kind of war zone of chasing rockets, having 15 seconds until the explosions, once the siren goes off, and really going to people's families' houses and listening to their story and document their story. This was not my background. This was not something that I actually chose to be doing. I thought I've been doing it. I was doing it because no one else was doing it at the time, and I felt the need to be speaking up and presenting what I've been experiencing personally. And I'll be honest, there's not one person who's not been affected by, living in a rocket zone, what's so called. Everybody's been affected psychologically in a certain kind of way or another. And once I personally moved on with my personal life, I needed to find a balance to myself. And I couldn't stop. It was amazing for me that after traveling around the world and documenting and taking photographs, the first time I got attached taking photographs after Sderot to chasing rockets was actually the Judean desert right outside of Jerusalem. And for 3 years, I was documenting the entire surrounding of Jerusalem. I couldn't stop taking photographs. I felt that was my self-expressing way for me to balance myself, first of all. And eventually I got to the Dead Sea. And I think there are many Israelis and people out there that have a huge love for the Dead Sea. Like we've just seen this past month, we just celebrated 50 years to Earth Day, having a first of a kind competition, giving international competition, giving people that millions of people that actually experienced the Dead Sea. We gave them the platform, especially during the Corona global crisis, giving them a platform to self-express themselves and share their moments and their favorite times at the Dead Sea. We're amazed, by the way, about the reactions. We got over 13,000 photographs, over 40 countries, including the Middle East, actually took part of this. So I was not really unique in that kind of atmosphere, having a passion for the Dead Sea for many years, but finding your own unique way to document this place that's never been seen before, I felt this is something very personal. And the more I got into it, the more I saw that the story of Sderot, because the messaging of Sderot living in the Gaza border is not how that we're all very, the messaging living in the Gaza border was resilience. Our people are moving on with their daily routine life, having this hope of living. And the same thing with the Dead Sea. I mean, even though you've been experiencing literally not only the drama, but the horrific aspects of the land of crawling under you in terms of the sinkholes, destroying beach holes, destroying different streets, but seeing the beauty coming out and the life coming out from the Dead Sea, that was the contrast that really brought to me someone that very much got hooked to it as an interesting story, showing both sides of the story, but trying to be optimistic at the end of the day. So that's somehow in a nutshell about moving from Sderot, a battered place, but moving to the environmental drama and trying to have the same kind of impact of choosing a cause and trying to getting the story out there, and using a lot of ways of self-expressing through photography, learning how to work with media, with the journalists, getting them excited about the story itself. And eventually, having the Dead Sea is a great story that we are able to reach out to a variety of audiences and get them excited about the story.
That's great. Now I definitely understand it more. I want to help everyone who's watching us who might not be familiar with the Dead Sea's story to understand a little bit better. So fill us in for one moment, just on why exactly the Dead Sea is shrinking. What led to this phenomenon?
So why is the Dead Sea shrinking? Well, if I say it in one sentence, 30% of that reason is because of the industry, the factories in the southern parts, which are pumping out the water from the northern part of the Dead Sea to the south part. That's 30% of the problem. But the main problem, which has not been almost addressed, is the 70% of the problem is the historical flow to the Dead Sea has been dried out. Meaning the water bodies that are connected to the Dead Sea, if it's the Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret, the Jordan River, these are the historical flow that used to be connected to the Dead Sea. And because of different reasoning of using that water, talking about the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River, for agricultural purposes, for drinking water purposes, uh, the water does not reach the Dead Sea eventually. So, making a long story short, it's not a question of water being pumped out or going out from the Dead Sea. There's no water coming into the Dead Sea. I mean, later on as we go on, we'll evaluate to talking about the huge quantities of water that's missing today for the Dead Sea, which is 750 million cubic water. I mean, you put Israel's 5 desalination plants together, that's not even enough for what the Dead Sea needs. So we're seeing how this is a much bigger picture, huge amount of quantities of water. Where's it going to come from when water became the most value asset in the entire Middle East for drinking, first of all? You get to these very moral aspects. What do we actually use this fresh water for? What's the priority? So I'll leave it over there, but just showing you know, the big challenge we actually have today of saving the Dead Sea, but also understanding what the roots of the problem itself. And so actually looking up north, not necessarily down south.
I'm happy that you mentioned that. In a minute, I think we'll actually take you up north to talk a little bit more about that. But before I do that, I wanted to let you know that you're talking about how the love for the Dead Sea is something that Israelis throughout the country really it's ingrained in us. But it also seems to be something that speaks to people from around the world, because as you and I have been talking, we have received shout outs from Hamburg, Germany. We have a shout out from Istanbul, from Maryland in the US, from Tel Aviv, from Brussels, from Portugal, from Stockholm, Sweden, and from Santiago, Chile, as well as Poland, Slovakia, and Scotland. So your message of the Dead Sea is making waves, which I know from you also. Waves are something that exists in the Dead Sea. So it's making waves throughout
actually,
yeah.
Over 2 meters, by the way.
I'm
Two
sorry.
meters, you got 2 meter waves in the Dead Sea.
Wow.
You're not believing. And trying to sail on those the waves is not the funnest thing in the world.
Wow. So I want to talk more about the waves, but I said we're going to go up north because you mentioned that the key to reviving the Dead Sea is really up north. And my understanding is, you're talking about the Lake of Galilee and the Jordan River, and I know that there's the dams that have been built there for agricultural reasons over the years that have cut off some of the water supply. And one of the big stories over the winter, where we had a very blessed winter of rainfall, record-breaking rainfall, and the Lake of Galilee has filled up now. It's the fullest it's been in 30 years. So, are they going to open up the dams? Are they going to let water to the Dead Sea? Is there going to be any sort of effect?
This is a perfect point. Those who do not realize that we had a very blessed year with the rains. The Sea of Galilee has been up for the first time in 3 decades, is in the highest level today. At the same time, even opening up the dams, there are 2 dams on the Sea of Galilee opening up to the Jordan River. I think the main aspect is the Jordan River, because even if you do open up the water, having water going to the Jordan River, people are forgetting that the other side of the Dead Sea and the Jordan River is the country Jordan. Jordan is the fourth country in the world having the least fresh water per capita. They have no drinking water whatsoever. And even though part of the peace treatment that we actually had in 95 with Jordan was 90% of it was supplying with water to Jordan, the kingdom of Jordan, the Jordan River has been pumped out of water almost completely. And the source of the water to the Jordan River is not only from the Sea of Galilee, it comes from other main rivers coming from Syria and from Jordan itself, dams over there as well, for agricultural purposes and for drinking purposes. So it's a complex Middle East aspect of dealing with this. And overall, you get to the whole concept of saving the Dead Sea. There's a lot of, on the long run, we're talking about water diplomacy, water technology and management that has to be taking place. And the more we get deeper into the whole story itself of saving the Dead Sea, this is a microcosmic of basically not only saving a water treasure, but really of cooperation in the Middle East. And only this past month, by the way, just seeing how the Dead Sea story Like you were just saying before, Yoni, how this sparks many people around the world, but even inside the Middle East. We've been having conversations with artists and photographers from Bahrain, from the Emirates, from Jordan, from Saudi Arabia, that actually vacationed and actually photographed on the Jordanian side in the Dead Sea. And we have today what's called citizens diplomacy, where we're trying to get people around this kind of cause and actually have a common sense where we can actually talk to one another on this kind of level of appreciating a water treasure. So on the long run, we're talking about very far. We'll talk about very later on as we go on about specific solutions for the Dead Sea. But overall, saving the Dead Sea is on a long run. We're talking about billions of dollars in solutions, years to be coming actually to try solving this aspect. And the thing is that every single day that passes, we're talking about over 600 Olympic pools are emptied every single day in the Dead Sea. Okay, so trying to grasp that 600 Olympic pools every day are dried up in the Dead Sea. And that's why the changes are so dramatic. And every day that goes by, we're losing this world treasure. What we can do as simple people, as a NGO specifically targeting for the Dead Sea, is to share the story in any way as possible, to expose it, to influence world public opinion, and eventually also to impact decision makers on the long run. But the first aspect that has to be doing is education and awareness. That's the most basic thing that has to be happening. And this is where we actually come in to try really getting that story out. And we have, again, the fact that this is a world wonder, showing arts of visuals of this world wonder, we have what it takes to, excite the audience and to get them emotionally involved. And that's the concept of it, taking this also with Stand With Us, going around to college campuses in the States and other places around the world, speaking and presenting, this beauty and magic of this world wonder. It's amazing what kind of audiences you can actually reach out to. A variety of really, very liberal audiences on one hand, but also very conservative audiences. I'm talking about even Christians. The fact there's biblical prophecies that are coming true on the Dead Sea. And there's fascinating stuff going on. And it's amazing how you can get everybody in the same kind of boat, have a consensus behind this cause. And this is what excites me. It's a much, much bigger picture focusing on the Dead Sea, but it involves just so much more than just a water treasure. We can go more into that as we go on.
I think maybe we will. Let's dive into this. No pun intended, because no one wants to dive into the Dead Sea. But let's zoom into this the water diplomacy that you were talking about before. What exactly is on the table in terms of cooperation and reviving the Dead Sea? There's talk about a Med-Dead plan, which is Mediterranean to Dead Sea Canal. There's talk of a Red-Dead plan, which is Red Sea to Dead Sea Canal. Give us a little understanding of what those look like, what the effect would be, and who of course are the powers that are involved in that.
Okay, so basically, if I start from the beginning, there are like 6 different plans to revive the Dead Sea as a project, like where to bring the water from, if it's from the Mediterranean Sea, if it's from the Sea of Galilee, if it's from the Red Sea, and eventually making long story short, the main project today on the table, which makes the most sense, even though it's not ecological or economical. The most common sense project today is actually from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea. This is actually a World Bank funded project, up to $10 billion for this project. It's actually the biggest project today in the world that's supposed to be built for this technology of desalinating water. By the way, desalination technology, Israel is very much advanced. Up to 90% of our drinking water is desalinated water. But like we said before, even putting all our plants, we have 5 desalinated plants together, is not enough for what the Dead Sea actually needs. And because the other side of the Dead Sea is Jordan cannot. This is where the moral compass actually goes to. When you have huge amount of quantities of fresh water, what are you going to do with it? What's the priority? Are you going to use this water to be saving a water treasure, or are you going to use this water to be, providing it to a thirsty population? And that's why, again, the more we get into the whole saving the Dead Sea, we're actually dealing with solving water problems of the Middle East and around the world. So the fact that Red Sea Dead Sea Canal, the Red Dead Sea project is the biggest project today in the world, it sounds very dramatic. But if you think about it for a second, it's squeezing the salt water from the Red Sea, turning into the fresh water. This kind of technology is taking the world, humanity, one step closer of taking the ocean, the salty ocean, and transforming it into fresh water that can be used for nations and countries throughout the entire world. I mean, the bigger picture here to understand, according to the UN, by the year 2025, 2/3 of the world are going to be suffering from lack of water or clean water. So the Dead Sea has in its ability to be answering these kind of aspects. So the Red Sea Dead Sea Canal, like we said, is the biggest project, $10 billion, and the first priority of this project is actually providing water to Jordan, providing them with fresh water, and technically by then you could start talking about bringing the natural solution for the Dead Sea. It's having been the Sea of Galilee, opening the dams, like you were saying before, and having the water flow through the Jordan River, having all the pumps being pumped out of the Jordan River, and having it flow to the Dead Sea in any way as possible. So that's the ultimate solution for the Dead Sea, is actually having a natural flow to it, the natural solution. But at the same time, we cannot forget that when you have a thirsty population, that has to be treated first. That's a basic human right, and that's why that's the priority. So before saving the Dead Sea, you got to provide water for a thirsty population.
You really bring up this important point of the dynamics that are going on kind of from a geopolitical perspective, and understanding the greater picture here in the Middle East. I'll already say you're inspiring me, and it's always cool when this happens. Actually, our next show on Stand With Us Connect is actually an interview with WaterGen, which is a company that's is an Israeli company that is basically making water out of thin air, out of the humidity of the air. Like you said, Israel's been on the forefront of water tech, is on the forefront of water technology, and it's always inspiring to see that. And hopefully, as you said, this will lead to an improvement with the Dead Sea. But until that happens, and you said we're looking at about 600 Olympic swimming pools a day of the Dead Sea emptying. Right. I'm sorry?
Evaporating. Yeah.
Evaporating. Correct. Evaporating. Thank you for that. And you've been documenting all of this. You've seen these really, it must be a drastic change every single day. And I'm sure if you're going back weekly, monthly, you're seeing incredible changes. What are some of the interesting phenomena that you've noticed over the past 3.5 years of documenting the recession?
Well, Yoni, since you mentioned about seeing it with your own eyes, I'll try showing it over here on the screen about the dramatic changes. And again,
Please.
up until today, the only documentation we actually had of seeing the changes of the Dead Sea was through satellites. If you just go on Google and you write, receding water level Dead Sea, you would see the satellites every 20, 30 years and seeing the difference. And of course, seeing those kind of images, it's not personal, it's not intimate, it does not have that kind of an effect. But this is the first of a kind of attempt. I'll try seeing it from up close. So this is when I went for the first time on the boat in April 2016. You see the reflection of the screen, but you can still get it. This formation was completely under the water. Okay, and that's why I'm telling you that the 5 months after the first excursion, I was completely shocked, because this is actually what I started to see. Year after year. You
Wow.
can really see the water level going, receding. And what I was doing on these boat excursions, I'll actually measure with a measuring tape, even though it's not a professional kind of way to measure. It's still an indication how much the water actually recedes. And you really see the changes in a very, in a very dramatic kind of way. So I have basically 4 years today. This past April, even though it was very hard to get out of the house, I got special permission from the government actually to go on the sea with a kayak and to document my 4th year of documentation. So this is, again, just another example we have It's amazing for me reaching a place in the exact right moments, again, completely out of the water. Check out these three formations, completely inside the water. Okay, and check this out. This is very, very dramatic. This is, again, year after year. So this is April 18, April 17, 18, April 19. And now I have this exact same location from April 2020. And this got a lot of coverage, actually. This time lapse got a lot of coverage in the media. We're able to get that out because it was the first of a kind of documentation showing year after year the exact same point. On the other hand, talking about the beauty and magic coming out, the treasures coming out from the Dead Sea. Check this out. This is a salt diamond. Look at this. It comes out like this, as a square. Okay. And every time we go on these excursions, we actually find these salt diamonds come out from the Dead Sea. And if you had a wild guess, Yoni, where do you think this comes out from in the Dead Sea specifically?
Where geographically does it come out from, or?
Well, I was hinting more and more like the sinkholes in the Dead Sea.
Ah,
Some of it is devastating the entire region, destroying beach holds. Like we said, beach lines have been closed down, roads have been changed completely. Millions of dollars have been poured, actually up to $90 million a year for damages because of the sinkholes. And the fact that you had this water treasure coming out from the sinkhole is something amazing as a part of an Israeli story, taking something which is so catastrophic, but having this beauty and magic coming out is something amazing. And we send these huge ones to labs around the world to take measurements. And the fact we have NASA, NASA was excited about this kind of project we've been involved with, and they encourage us. What I've been doing in the past couple of years on the Dead Sea. Go do the same thing in other salt bodies around the world, and try seeing the resemblance. So it's a fascinating topic, seeing how this has a lot to do with everybody else. And if I talk for a second about the life coming out from the Dead Sea, if I summarize 4 years of documentation, that's basically in one sentence, seeing the life coming out from the Dead Sea. The first time I went to explore the Dead Sea shores, in the sinkhole, I actually saw fish. What does it
wow.
actually mean having fish in the Dead Sea? I actually took pictures of these fish, not realizing what kind of significance this actually has in the spiritual world, especially in the Christian world. They go wild about that because these are live prophecies talking about, in Ezekiel and Zechariah, talking about how one day a fisherman will be going to the Dead Sea and fishing for the fish, and how the fact that we have these geological phenomena coming out from the Dead Sea called salt chimneys. And I urge you guys, just go in any social media, just write hashtag salt chimneys. You'll be amazed. These amazing things are coming out of the water itself. And these are caused by the fresh water springs coming from Jerusalem and the Hebron mountains. So it's amazing how you're able to connect the religious, spiritual world on one hand, but also the scientific world, and being excited about the changes happening in the Dead Sea.
Fantastic. I've never seen a salt diamond before. I've heard a lot about sinkholes, and maybe we'll touch on that in a moment. But we have a question here, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name properly. Oluchi is asking, why is it called the Dead Sea? And I think let's zoom out just to make sure everyone understands why it's so incredible to have life coming out of the Dead Sea.
It's a very good question. First of all, this is how we usually start with the boat excursions, the Dead Sea. First of all, it's not a sea, it's a lake, because there's no water leaving from this body of water. And it's not dead, it's completely full of life. Not only the fact that millions of people around the world, they get treated physically in the Dead Sea, the fact it's the lowest place on earth, you actually have 6 or 8% more oxygen. What does this mean, actually having this very low percentage of more oxygen? This has a huge significance to the entire scientific world and to the therapeutic world. That's why people actually can actually get healed in the Dead Sea, having different skin diseases, breathing diseases. So even now, it's already providing life for people. Of course, we have testimonies of Cleopatra, of Queen Shiva taking mineral baths, also with the mud baths. People have been seeing Dead Sea products throughout the world with the mud, and this is real. This is real stuff. And we actually take out every time we take out mud, and you put it on your face, and you really feel how it's actually burning, different things, and it really does the work. So the fact it's called the Dead Sea, which is a very good point, it's a political term actually used by the Romans. The Romans actually called this place a Dead Sea because we're forgetting how the word salary actually comes from the word salt, and they actually gave this name the Dead Sea. And Hebrew, we do not call it the Dead Sea; it's the Salton Sea or Yam HaMelach. And because that political term, it got stuck. And unfortunately, we thought maybe having a campaign to try changing the wording, but it's not. It could be deceiving. The fact that's called the Dead Sea. You would think because there's no fish, actually fish in the Dead Sea. It's completely dead. But there's actually live microorganisms living in the Dead Sea because of the fresh water springs underneath the Dead Sea. So this is actually live happening, and only, by the way, in the past 7, 8 years, this is only then this has been known to science. Okay, the fact there's live microorganisms which are creating these beautiful salt chimneys, these salt sleeves coming out from the Dead Sea. So it's anything but being dead, and that's what's so fascinating about this one of a kind place.
Amazing. And I think we'll actually take a moment to give everyone a little bit of a better understanding of the Dead Sea that's not so dead, that's brimming with life. We're going to bring the Dead Sea to all of you wherever you're tuning in from. We're going to show you a short clip just so you can understand some more of what the beauty of the Dead Sea looks like. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's making me. I've got an itch now, really, to get out there. Actually, somebody asked us. We're going to start taking some questions from our audience, and somebody else seems to be itching to join you out there as well, and wanted to know how they can actually take a tour on the boat, on your boat.
Good point. Well, first of all, right now, because of the crisis, we're actually going into a virtual boat excursion where I'll be going on a boat or a kayak and streaming live to audiences
Wow.
around the world who actually want to see firsthand. So this is the one thing we'll be doing. And if you just look on anywhere again on Google, social media, just look for boat ride Dead Sea, you'll get to me directly. And if you do come to Israel, it's a definitely recommendation. Do not forget this experience. It's a one of a kind way to experience this world wonder from up close. I definitely warmly recommend it.
Fantastic. So all of you who are tuning in addition to all the places that I mentioned before, those of you who are tuning in from the Netherlands, from Geneva, Switzerland, from Toronto as well, and from all over the world, remember that you can actually take this tour when you're able to come back to Israel. And I have another question here from Shlomoria Ben David, who's asking, what are there political ramifications regarding the Dead Sea? And I guess we're talking more of the dynamics of the countries, etc.
That's a very good question. I think that the average person, I think the average Israeli does not realize that the entire northern part of the Dead Sea is considered over the green line in the political terms, which is something which is very interesting to understand. We're talking about two-state solution. What about the Dead Sea? So there's a lot that has not been taken into consideration about this area itself, which is very interesting. On the other hand, because this is an environmental project or environmental cause, we are able to bring a lot of people together behind this cause, and that's what's fascinating about the story. The fact that the northern part of the Dead Sea, you could actually have Palestinian Arabs going to the beach line together with the Israelis and actually see that firsthand. And as well as taking this cause to very, very liberal crowds is something to understand the value the Dead Sea can actually have of bringing people together. In terms of the political atmosphere happening today, I'm not sure what is the future of the Dead Sea in that regards. But if you just look on the map, on any Google Earth or Google Map, and you look at the Dead Sea today, it's interesting that we all grew up Those of us who grew up in Israel or in the Jewish day school, drawing the map of Israel, you'd have, the Sea of Galilee, like a round, then you'd have a line, then you have a whole tongue, drawing the Dead Sea. And this is completely inaccurate. You got two parts of the Dead Sea, completely disconnected two parts for the past 40 years, by the way. It has been disconnected. The southern part is completely artificial, I mean, if we like it or not. That has been the main focus of the tourism in the industry. But the northern part of the Dead Sea, which is the Dead Sea that remains today, is the only thing we actually have remaining, and that's actually in political terms over the Green Line. So technically, I do not think any politician has been taking into consideration in terms of what's the future of the Dead Sea in political terms, because who says the water, the fact that water is being pumped from the north to the south for the pools of the hotels and for the industry, who knows what's going to be the future of that? When, like we said, these minerals today are providing up to 25% of the world's agriculture, feeding, like we said, 1 billion people around the world. So it already has a significance throughout the world. In terms of political aspect, we do not know. One last point about the Red Sea Dead Sea Canal. Again, interesting aspect of the Dead Sea. This became, according to the World Bank, this became the symbol of the Middle East for cooperation and coexistence. That's why they're putting so much money into this project, because they've been realizing how the water diplomacy is one of the only things we have today, being very realistic and blunt about it. We actually have to be dealing with neighbors and with countries throughout the entire Middle East. We have countries that have a lot of ties with Israel, not official diplomatic ties, that started with water management and water technology. So again, the Dead Sea is a much, much bigger picture. Not many people, even politicians, been taking too much into consideration.
I think you've really sold people on how important the Dead Sea is, both from the geological treasure perspective as well as the dynamics over like the water politics and water diplomacy. Because I'm seeing that we have a couple of questions here. I'm gonna combine into one. Both David Bruce Sawankin and Phyllis Orbach, excuse me, and Deborah Ann Bakoy are asking about how can we save the sea and how can we stop the disappearance of the Dead Sea, which we touched on before, but maybe another summary and make some of the ideas that we haven't discussed yet.
Okay. Well, I think making it more personal, what can actually be doing to save the Dead Sea is to preserve it in any way as possible. The fact that today we're in a go together with the municipalities of the Dead Sea to building an art museum in the Dead Sea to preserve this place and to educate people about this place is the one thing we can actually do. In terms of the long run, which is very far from right now, like we said, the bigger solutions for the Dead Sea, not much we can actually do as simple people, as personal people, but everything starts with the basic education and awareness about this story. And that's why, again, to preserve the Dead Sea through any way as possible is what can be done. And we urge people, take part, become a member of the Dead Sea Revival Project. We would love to inspire your audiences, throughout in the entire world, through any way as possible. And that's one thing we can actually do. And on another level, if we understand the value of the Dead Sea, when we get to the point, this is, I think, the message that we have on college campuses, that the value, the message of the Dead Sea is to evaluate water. That we've been taking so much into granted. Water is one of the most precious things we're going to have in the entire world in the next decade. And this actually, according even to the UN, the water crisis is one of the main things they're going to be handling in the next decade. So we understand the value of water and solving water solutions. It comes from Israel. And the Dead Sea has the power to inspire people, mainly using visual of arts, talking about these kind of issues. And I'm proud to say, I've been to the Salton Sea in California, which is a very similar story to the Dead Sea. And eventually this past winter, I've been to Colorado, where the Colorado River actually starts, where the water actually is supposed to be providing 40 million people in the west of the U.S. And that's going through a huge crisis over there, because the same reasoning with the Dead Sea. The historical flow has been diverted for other purposes, for agriculture, for drinking water. So there's a lot of similarities actually happening. So we understand the bigger picture of evaluating water. We understand how everything has to start with education and awareness. This is what we can do, and this is what we're doing in any ways possible.
Thank you, Noam. I think you're doing a great job. And if I understood correctly, just the very fact that people are asking the question now and are getting curious, that's the first step to actually answering that question of how we revive the Dead Sea. We have another. Yes, please.
Yeah, I was saying you're correct. I'm with you.
Okay, great. We have a question here that is focusing on some of the Dead Sea products. You mentioned, first of all, you mentioned the agricultural uses, but anyone who's, I think, been to a mall in the United States has come across the Dead Sea, the beauty products that are there. And Phyllis Orbach wants to know if the Dead Sea products sold there, if you know if their therapeutic qualities are as they're making them out to be.
Yes, 100, even though it does not sound right, but yes, 100%. Like we said, we have testimonies going all the way to the, to the historical times of Cleopatra and Queen Shiva, having testimonies of taking mineral baths and mud baths from the Dead Sea. Yeah, this does have real work. I was expecting a different kind of question about the products. Is people would say, by buying a product, is that ruining the Dead Sea? Which is a more controversial, not that obvious kind of answer to be saying that. And I could go back to because this is usually you would get this kind of question all the time in terms of the industry, the companies, which is the favorite thing to be putting on the focus on. And I'll just start by saying, like we said before, 30% of the problem is the industry and factors. It is part of the problem, not the main story itself. Meaning, even if you do stop the companies, which are the biggest, by the way, productive companies we actually have today in Israel, even if you stop these companies, both in Israel and in Jordan, it's 15% each side. Even if you close down these factories, you still have the water receding over a meter a year. So therefore, again, our focus, again, being as a private nonprofit, focus on this cause on the long run, we have to be focusing on the much bigger picture, looking up north about the historical flow. So that's my answer in terms of the products. If that's going to change anything, stopping the production, not necessarily.
All right, thank you, Noam. We are reaching the end of tonight's show, and so I wanted to ask you if you had any final thoughts on the Dead Sea and on your project, on the Dead Sea Revival project, that you'd like to share with us before we say goodbye.
Well, the last thought is maybe the last thing that we did. We had this 1 month competition, and I'm so proud to be saying I think it's one of the positive things that actually came out of Israel during this crisis, inspiring people around the world. Like we said, we had participation from over 40 countries, including from the Middle East, submitting their favorite moments in the Dead Sea. And now we're getting closer, building a professional gallery at the Dead Sea, so people could be inspired by that and providing them with basic information about the Dead Sea story. We're looking forward, being as a service in these kind of times of going virtual and taking out a boat, taking out a kayak, and going exploring the Dead Sea, making it personal with your own comfort. And we urge people to be in touch with that note.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us and for inspiring us about the Dead Sea and what we can do to be a part of keeping the Dead Sea alive. And we're definitely leaving here with some food for thought, and I think a lot of big dreams about when we can join up with you on the Dead Sea, and hopefully that will be very, very soon.
Thank you, Yoni, so much. It was a pleasure being on your show. Thank you, Stan.
Always a pleasure. We'll see you soon. And we will be back on Monday, as I mentioned earlier in the program, for an interview with WaterGen, which is the Israeli company creating drinking water from thin air. If you've been tuning in and listening to what Noam had to say, then you definitely don't want to miss hearing about one of the most innovative Israeli water tech companies out there that could possibly be one of the roads to helping us save the Dead Sea, one of the links in that chain. On Thursday, we will also be having a conversation, a very special conversation with Israel's ambassador to the UK, Mark Regev. So make sure you tune in to Stand With Us Connect. You don't want to miss those programs. As usual, it was a pleasure to connect with you today. If you can't come to Israel, we'll bring Israel to you. We'll see you next time on Stand With Us Connect.